this administration and how they are posturing early on in the tenure to do so much more.
You know, we've been talking about the way the president is pushing for these changes. He's been signing a lot of executive orders. Do you think executive orders are enough? Couldn't another president basically overturn them in 4 years? What do you want to see from a legislative agenda?
Well, I think the president is setting the standard of what should come out of Congress. But we should not minimize the impact of executive order. It was through an executive order in 1941 that integrated the armed services to allow African Americans to serve our country and fight in World War II. It was also through that executive order that opened up all the federal government so there will be opportunities for African Americans to be employed by federal government to serve our nation. So for African Americans, we understand the importance historically of executive orders, but we also understand the need to further the policy trajectory so that it becomes legislation that is cemented in our culture. The Voting Rights Act of 65, the Fair Housing Act, the Civil Rights Act of 64, those are all things that became embedded in our policy landscape, which really opened up this nation to be a more perfect union.
That's Derek Johnson, the CEO and president of the NAACP. Derek, thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And let's learn more about some of the president's executive orders today, including a pause on new oil and gas leases on federal land that's prompting backlash from the energy industry. Here's John Kerry, the special presidential envoy for climate, earlier today.
He makes climate central to foreign policy planning, to diplomacy, and to national security preparedness. It creates new platforms to coordinate climate action across the federal agencies and departments, sorely needed.
Nathan Rod of NPR's climate team joins us now. Nate, first, tell me more about these oil and gas leases on federal land. What does Biden's action do, and what doesn't it do?
So we're still waiting to see the full text. So we do not know how long of a pause this is. But there's a belief, certainly in the oil and gas industry, that this is going to become permanent. You know, that's what Biden said he was going to do during his campaign. It's what a lot of environmental groups and climate activists want to see. So that would mean no new oil and gas leases on federal lands, you know, which in the long term could be a big deal. Roughly a quarter of the country's total greenhouse gas emissions come from fossil fuels extracted on public lands. Notice I say fossil fuels there because coal makes up a lot of those emissions, and this new executive order does not address coal leases, you know, which have already been on a steep decline anyway just because of market forces.
Interesting. Now, Biden also wants to conserve a little under a third of the country's land and ocean water over the course of a decade. Can you put that into context?
Yeah, this is something that the scientific community has been calling for a while, and it often gets overlooked, but alongside the climate crisis that we're hearing about, also the biodiversity crisis, we're in the middle of a massive extinction. And that is just as much a threat to our existence as unmitigated climate change. You know, we depend on ecosystems, water, air, food, and those systems are being shredded by our actions. You know, a recent report by the United Nations found that 2/3 of all of the land on Earth has been significantly altered by human activity, which is just kind of mind-boggling. And so to stop and slow the extinction crisis, scientists are saying we can protect 50% of land and water by the year 2050. And as Biden announced today, 30% of land and water by 2030. Let's step in that direction, and it's a commitment that many other countries around the world have also made.
I'm just thinking back to the campaign. It wasn't that long ago that President Trump was repeatedly accusing Joe Biden of wanting to ban fracking in Pennsylvania, which, as we know, Biden said he was not going to do. Is he going back on that promise, or if anything, does all of this mean for Pennsylvania, for example?
So Pennsylvania doesn't mean. And I know that this got a lot of pressure, a lot of hot takes during the election, but most of the oil and gas development that happens in Pennsylvania is on private land. You know, it's the same for Texas, same for other states. And this leasing ban that he announced today does nothing on private land. And it does nothing on fracking. You know, Biden has repeatedly said that he would not ban fracking. He has not banned fracking, and there's even questions about whether he could legally if he wanted to. The states that are most likely to be impacted by today's executive order are states that have a lot of public land. federal lands. So we're talking New Mexico, Wyoming, Alaska, Colorado, mostly western.
I'm sure private industry is not going to be happy about this. What are the chances? Pretty high. I'm assuming that this will face legal hurdles.
Yeah, undoubtedly. That's just that's 21st century government for you. I know that the Western Energy Alliance, which represents oil and gas producers in western states, has already said, anticipating this move, they would sue to stop it. Again, we haven't seen the actual text, and so I'm not sure what grounds they would actually try to sue on. The Federal Mineral Leasing Rights Act basically requires that the federal government do quarterly lease sales, so if this does become a permanent ban, there might be some grounds for a lawsuit there. But again, we just got to see what the full text says.
Nate, this all fits into a larger climate agenda. As we just heard from Tanya's piece there ahead of us, what else can we expect from President Biden?
Quite a bit if he's going to live up to all the promises he made during the campaign. His boldest pledge was to make the U.S. a carbon neutral economy by the year 2050, which would take massive changes in the way that we do transportation, industry, energy production, and really to do all of that, you need Congress. So we'll see what else he can do executively to get us pointed in that direction, but to really make a big, lasting change, you probably need all of government, and it's unclear at this point if he's going to be able to get that.
Nathan Rott on NPR's climate team, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
And you're listening to Here and Now.
On WHYY, it's 117.
When Elizabeth Blackwell entered medical school in 1847, all the professors and students were men.
The very idea of a woman sitting in a medical lecture hall studying the body in the company of men was appalling.
I'm Elsa Chang, the story of America's first female doctor. This afternoon on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4 on WHYY.
I'm Sharon Brody. A U.S. terrorism alert warns of a potential for violence amid lingering anti-government sentiment following the presidential election victory of Joe Biden. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security says it has no information on a specific or credible plot, but says some violent extremists with objections to the exercise of governmental authority and the presidential transition and other objections fueled by false narratives could pose a threat. The head of the Republican National Committee today declined to encourage former President Trump to run for the White House in 2024. Daniel told the Associated Press the GOP will stay neutral in the next presidential primary. The White House Coronavirus Response Coordinator says it is essential for Congress to pass President Biden's COVID-19 relief bill. He says that is the way to keep the momentum on vaccinations and more testing capacity to contain the virus. You're listening to Here Now.
On 90.9 FM, it's 119. Up next, political strategist Bill Press and Ellis Stewart reflect on President Biden's first week in office.
To really be informed, you need to move beyond the headlines. You need to know what's behind the big stories and what's going on in your neighborhood with news from your local NPR station.
Consider This from WHYY and NPR is available wherever you get your podcasts.
Supporting WHYY BS Cable, producing certified voice and data cable assemblies for data center and business connections. WBE and WEE Bank certified and produced locally in Pennsylvania since 1984. BSCable.com.
Celebrating 50 years of television's best drama from Masterpiece on PBS. Sunday night, the premiere of the three-part miniseries based on an award-winning novel about the end of slavery in Jamaica. A beautiful, moving adaptation of The Long Song. Sunday night at 10 on WHYY TV 12. It's 1:20. This is 90.9 WHYY.
Funding for Here and Now comes from Sanovian, a global biopharmaceutical company marking 10 years of commitment to science and innovation by helping people with serious medical conditions, working to advance healthier lives in its communities. Sanovian, take on tomorrow. Learn more at Sanovian.com.
It's Here and Now. Former President Trump's Senate impeachment trial isn't scheduled to start until February 9th. But Republican senators are already declaring it dead on arrival. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky yesterday forced a vote on whether a former president could even stand trial after leaving office. Most Republicans clearly said no. Only 5 voted to support moving forward with the trial. And that signals a difficult road ahead for Senate Democrats. They need 17 Republican votes to convict. Senator Paul called the vote a victory.
This impeachment is nothing more than a partisan exercise designed to further divide the country. Democrats claim to want to unify the country, but impeaching a former president, a private citizen, is the antithesis of unity.
Let's bring in our political strategist, Alice Stewart, the Republican, is here. Hey, Alice.
Hi, Peter. Great to be with you.
And Bill Press, the Democrat. Bill, welcome to you.
Hi, it's good to be back. Hello, and hi, Alice.
Hi, Bill.
Right. Look, we normally jump right into the news, but I do want to reflect on what Senator Paul just said there about unity and what President Biden said about unity during his inaugural speech. A lot of people have been wondering over the last couple of days if it's even possible anymore. So, Bill, I want to start by asking you to put your philosopher's hat on. Can this country unite, and what would that look like to you?
I don't think we have to look, yes, is the quick answer. I don't think we have to look that far back. I mean, I'd almost say, Peter, you know, if you live in the United States of America and you don't believe in unity, maybe you ought to find someplace else to live. I think we can. What does unity mean? It doesn't mean getting everything you want. You know, it doesn't mean giving up your principles. It means working together to get things done. When I say we don't have to look that far back, you know, in the 90s, we had a situation identical to today, where neither party had a majority in the Senate. Tom Daschle and Trent Lott, Democrat and Republican, worked out an arrangement where they worked together, and they got lots of stuff done, one of the most productive sessions of Congress. So we can work together. With a 50-50 split, you almost have to work together. And I think that's what the American people want. And God knows there are common goals like getting on top of this coronavirus and bringing the economy back. To start with those, right? Common goals. Now let's get to work and get something done in both areas.
But Alice, 2021 is not the 1990s. What do you think? What does unity look like to you?
It remains to be seen, and I do think it should be a focus of this administration, because that was a focus of the campaign. He talked about restoring the soul of America and seeking unity, and following that up on Inauguration Day, as Bill said, you know, as America, never fail when we act together and we work together. We treat each other with dignity and respect, and I totally agree that President Biden does treat people with dignity and respect, and I do think he wants unity. But in terms of walking the walk, not just talking the talk, I have not seen that to date. Granted, it's only been a week, but as we see Democrats moving forward with impeachment and the policies that this administration has put forth, the executive orders, they are geared toward the 81 million Americans that supported him and fly in the face of those who did not vote for him. So I will give him time. I think he wants to follow through on his commitment, but I think it's important that we have to understand unity is you get what you want, I get some of what I want, but we do it by working together, and that's the key.
I do want to look at some of those executive orders, but let's start with impeachment, because this is going to be tough, isn't it? That vote in the Senate yesterday was, what kind of statement were Republicans making when they essentially said they would not hold the president accountable for inciting the Capitol riot?
Well, many of them, as you heard, did so based on what they view as the constitutional argument moving forward, and saying it's unconstitutional to seek impeachment for a private citizen, a president who's no longer in office. And many of them, you heard the words, they're doing this, they accuse Democrats of doing this out of anger or rage towards a former vice president, and they see it as a distraction. We should be looking at COVID. And obviously, with the support that measure had yesterday, it really sent a rallying cry to the Democrats that this is not only an uphill battle, it's going to be a very difficult battle. And I think McConnell is striking the right tone by saying, I want to hear the evidence,
and I will leave it up to each senator, specifically Republican senators, their own devices as to whether or not they want to move forward with a conviction in the Senate.
Bill, your response. I know Democrats don't think this is going to be a waste of time. I know they made the point that you can have a trial for a president who's not in office, but what do you think? Was that vote assigned to you that this isn't going anywhere? And if that's the case, how should Democrats respond?
Well, first, I just have to say the constitutional question is BS, if I may, right? In 1876, as we know, the Senate convicted a former Secretary of State who resigned rather than rather than be impeached. We've been over this road. That's BS, and so is the idea that this is a partisan vote. I don't know about all our listeners, but when I grew up, sedition against the United States of America, an attempt to overthrow the United States of America, it didn't matter whether you were Democrat or Republican. As Lynn Cheney said, there's never been a greater betrayer by any president than inciting insurrection against another branch of government.